Well, good afternoon. Hello, my name's Dick Dodge. I'm Dean of the Halmos College, so welcome today to our mini symposium. I want to give you a few introductions about our college and our department. Our president, George Hembry, was unable to be here today. He sends his regrets. There's a Board of Trustees meeting at the main campus, so he had to attend to that. But he wanted me to convey his good wishes and his great pleasure to have you all here today, and welcome to the university. Some background about NSU if you haven't been here, and I know many of you have, but our university is pretty young, less than 55 years old. We're growing in size and quality. We're ranked in the top 300 of 6,000 US universities, so that's something to be proud of. And there's a big main campus about 12 miles west with some 23,000 students and great economic impact, so that's also kind of special for our university. There are 18 colleges at NSU, and our college is the Halmos College of Natural Sciences and Oceanography. We're proud to be one of those colleges. We're located both at the main campus and at the Ocean campus, where you're here today. So before I tell you a little bit more about our college and our center, I wanted to tell you a little bit about the branding campaign that NOAA has recently participated in. It's all about We're the Sharks. It's got a kind of a sound-alike voice you may be familiar with. So here's our new branding campaign.
What have we here? Another random school of fish. Watch as they mimic each other's every move. Even their own mothers can't tell these fish apart. In this school, there is no room for individualism, no room for acts of courage, no room for bravery. These fish live in fear.
Nova Southeastern University. Prepare to dominate.
So that's what it is. We're proud to be Sharks, and we're proud to have you here as Sharks. You're all honorary Sharks today. Quick review and overview of our college. We were the first academic unit at the university, initially housed on a houseboat, but today we have a great facility here in the Guy Harvey Oceanographic Center facility or building, and we have still plenty of room to grow here, so we're looking forward to the future. We have the biggest undergraduate population at the university, the largest major, which is biology, and the fastest growing major, which is marine biology. And we're the research leader of the university in terms of colleges, so that's something that we're very happy with. So quick housekeeping before we go ahead. We have restrooms outside. If the men's room is right outside to the right and left, and the women's is all the way down to the end of the hall. And I do want to recognize the group that's made this all possible today. Thanks to Dr. Bernard Riegel. He's really been the spearhead of this organization and campaign today. So thank you, Dr. Riegel. To Peggy Ulrich for her help, and Missy Doerr especially for organizing. Missy is here somewhere. She'll stand up and be recognized. There she is here. Technician, OIT technician, Arnold. Arnold's made all this video and voice possible, and Maria Scalise for organizing and taking pictures. So now on with the show a bit. Our regional venue is Florida. You all know that, of course, but there's no better place in the United States, I think, than to talk about the situation of US reefs. We're directly located in the long Florida reef tract up in the northern portion. We're at the tree line of coral reefs. Even without that added stress, our situation is already on the edge, and very serious indeed in terms of health of the ecosystem in Florida and in the world. Florida is an extreme beneficiary of the largesse of reefs. Our local reefs are very important economically, over $9 billion in annual income, over 100,000 jobs can be traced to reef consequences, and 52,000 jobs and $3 billion income in Broward County alone. So that's pretty special in terms of the economic impact. But of course, it's an extreme ecologic impact too for the many services that reefs provide. And I think many of you already understand that, and that's one of the reasons we're here today. I know I'm preaching to the choir, and you know about these things, most of you, but We have abundant global, national, and local issues facing our reefs. Most of the reefs in the world, and certainly in Florida, are under extreme stress, degradation, demise, ocean warming, ocean acidification, and the effects of man, all the things that go along with that, sedimentation from dredging, sewage, pollution, all of this is stress, and consequences are mortality and demise of the reefs. And so what can we do to mitigate this situation? Well, we can have a meeting about it. And here we are today talking about some of the possible solutions. And they include, no matter what your goal may be, I think research and understanding for developing actions for addressing threatened coral reefs, ranging from a host of possible solutions. Today we're bringing together a group of world-renowned and regionally renowned and state-renowned and nationally renowned speakers to talk about some of these issues and solutions, possible solutions. It's unfortunate we're in this perfect storm of reef demise, but I think there is some possibilities for resolution, provided we take some proper and wise research, management, and conservation. So we have a host of great speakers today. They're Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet. He'll be the first speaker, followed by distinguished Professor Terry Hughes. Steve O'Brien is our next speaker after that. Jennifer Koss, Director of the Coral Reef Conservation Program at NOAA. Joanna Walczak, a similar director here at the state of Florida. And Dr. Regal, our own, talking about the academic perspective. So let me take a moment to first introduce our speaker. Our first speaker and our distinguished speaker, Rear Admiral Gallaudet. He's a former Rear Admiral in the Navy, oceanographer of the Navy as well, commander of the Navy Meteorologic and Oceanographic Command, great experience in weather, ocean forecasting, hydrographic surveying, policy, planning, national security impacts of climate change, and has developed the Navy's information technology, cybersecurity, and intelligence. And of course, he is leading NOAA as a deputy for the federal agency, the best federal agency for coral reefs. So, Admiral Gallaudet, please come up and be microphoned here so you can tell us all about NOAA's role.
Okay, Dick, thanks for that introduction. And you should all notice something up here up front, that we've swapped lapel pins. So now I'm an official shark.
And I work for NOAA.
Good partnership.
So I'm looking for a retirement. Thank you.
Terrific. Well, it's great to be here. How are you all doing today? Oh, come on now. You could do a little better. You're in southern Florida. How are you all today? Nice. Excellent. Well, I feel the same way. It is great to be here for a whole number of reasons. Because I'm a career oceanographer and I love the field of anything ocean science, and which is a topic here today. Also, what's really neat is my oldest daughter is a sophomore, and she's here with us in the room, Laurel, and her friend Cade and Maeve. Thanks for coming. And so on that note, I should just sort of start off with a little bit of a personal introduction. So, at any rate, I had had a different path than my daughter. I went to the U.S. Naval Academy. But in a very similar way to Laurel, my focus was a lot like hers. I was in the water a lot. I was a swimmer, and she's a shark swimmer on the women's swim team. But I also studied oceanography. So like I said, I was in the water a lot like Laurel is today. Laurel, you should tell your coach to make a baseball card of you, by the way. And I also studied oceanography. And so you know, being so heavily immersed academically as well as physically, upon graduation as an ensign, my self-image was something like this. And Laurel knows it to be true, except minus the facial hair. The Navy didn't really allow that. But the reality is, upon graduation, I went to graduate school right away at Scripps Institution for the first time, and then did again for the Ph.D. So really, my naval experience began like this. And I was the better for it, because in this 21st century, to stay competitive, it takes advanced degrees, and certainly in STEM. And so I certainly encourage this program to keep growing like it has been, and it's great to be here, and I'll be your biggest champion. So, and actually it served me well. And when you look at what I did in the Navy as a senior oceanographer and meteorologist, I was a weather geek. And I even went on the show, for anybody who's seen the show. And actually I was trying to get Marshall Shepard to call it Ocean Geeks, but he kept his line. At any rate, that is really what is necessary to succeed for all you students out there is education and learning how to learn, as we were talking about during lunch today. And it served me well because I made flag before 3 years ahead of anybody in my class at the Naval Academy because of my advanced degrees. Not trying to toot my own horn, but to encourage the wonderful programs at the Halmos School and others like it. So that's sort of a personal introduction. But we're here to talk about corals in crisis. And if you recall what my opening slide was, it said about addressing this crisis with ocean optimism. And I'm taking a line from the Smithsonian's distinguished professor for ocean sciences, Nancy Carlton. And she's really put together a kind of a great campaign that I just fully buy into. And it's this ocean optimism idea. And because heretofore, we know that climate change is causing degradation of habitat worldwide. We know certainly with corals the issues that Professor Dodge just addressed of pollution, marine debris, runoff from the land, warming, acidification. They are all sorts of stressors. Yes, but going back to my time in the Navy, we didn't have conversations about losing. We had conversations about winning. And that's what our conversation today should be about. We got the problems, we got to assess them critically, but let's talk about winning. Because we're definitely, NOAA to me is a winning team, and I'm just really pleased that Jennifer Koss, the head of our Coral Reef Conservation Program, is here in the front row, and she certainly leads a winning team. And I think we have, in this country, we have what it takes to win. It's going to be a hard fight, but I think we have what it is, and I hope my presentation today will get a little bit at that. Now, an important consideration is how corals underpin what we call the American blue economy. And that's a term that we've adopted NOAA as a primary initiative to advance our ocean economy sustainably. So it's that provided by our coasts, our Great Lakes, and our oceans for a whole variety of applications and sectors. There's tourism, there's certainly fisheries, there's our seaports, and that can be a challenge when we're talking about corals, so it's how do we strike that balance to ensure our ocean economy continues to advance, but the environment is protected. So that's an important one. But our nation depends upon it. Consider this. Our U.S. seaports saw $5.4 trillion of economic activity last year. That was a 17% increase from the prior year. That number is 1/4 of U.S. GDP. So we are an ocean economy and we are an ocean nation, and we depend upon it. People in the heartland, their economies locally depend upon our seaports and our maritime domain. So allowing for both a healthy environment, healthy coral reefs, but also a strong fisheries and strong shipping is that challenge we have. Now, our Coral Reef Conservation Program will be talked about in a little more detail when Jennifer comes up later. But there are a few main elements here that you see depicted. On the upper left, is the fisheries piece of it. There's on the upper right, is the restoring and resiliency aspects of corals. And then on this bottom part here is the land-based sources of pollution that are affecting our reefs. I saw this firsthand in Culebra, Puerto Rico, where we undertake road stabilization work. Heretofore in that beautiful, pristine environment, when rains would come during hurricane season, all these dirt roads would become rivers of mud, and it would just kill all these corals. And now we've stabilized the roads, and they're looking beautiful, and we were diving on them firsthand and saw. So that's one example. And then in this lower right part, it's about restoration activity. And here you see one of these coral reef trees that I also was able to free dive on in Culebra. And so there's really wonderful work going on now under Jen's superb leadership. And that's sort of it holistically. Now, a couple details of supporting elements. We execute a coral reef monitoring program where we use satellite data, and our own Dr. Erica Toll, who used to work with me in headquarters, now oversees this effort. And then she works closely with our Coral Reef Watch program that is being led by Dr. Mark Eakin, who I was talking to Professor Dodge about, and he has time here with some of the faculty, like Dr. Feingold. Are you in the audience, Josh? Oh, back there. I look forward to meeting you later. And so I know you were friends and roommates, I believe, and so that's kind of a nice connection we have with this great school. Now, other elements that are important to consider are the public-private partnerships that we are increasing to address our challenge and challenges affecting corals. Here are some examples of a few. This Force Blue outfit, has anybody heard of this organization? Well, of course. Yeah, that's good. Let me give them a round of applause, please. This is a terrific outfit. They're taking veterans of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, many of which have PTSD, and in a therapeutic way, they're giving them purpose to help restore reefs, and they're doing it in a way which others can't do. I mean, they are highly trained with their special forces diving capabilities, and they've been able to restore some of the heavy damages in the Caribbean from Hurricane Maria, for example. And I've met some of these great patriots and friends of the environment, and they're just an inspiration. The Blue Star program that our Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary has developed is really a great model, where we've gotten tour operators, dive operators, and even fishing chartermen that have been willing to sign up and help us educate their customers on the best practices to promote healthy reefs and minimize and mitigate any kind of damages. And that's all voluntary, but they realize, their businesses they cannot survive economically if there are no healthy reefs. So that's terrific. And then we have a number of NGOs, for example, that we're working with very closely, like the Ocean Conservancy, and that really are helping us tell the story and do great good. This is the way ahead. Flexing the public-private partnerships more and more because there's such a will out there. When I graduated from high school and started my undergraduate program at the Academy in 1985, our country was just barely on to recycling glass bottles and aluminum cans. And look where we are today. Everybody wants a clean ocean. Everybody wants to remove marine debris. Everybody wants to recycle everything. And it's a great place to be, and we need to capture that public sentiment and use that as our ammunition in this fight. Now, there's other really interesting aspects of our program, and there are aspects that is why I think we are a winning team, is that we have some tremendous science and technology advances that are allowing us to get at the problem. For example, on the right there is Dr. Ian Enochs, and he is with us, and he works also with our Cooperative Institute at the University of Miami. And just like Abby Renegard, where are you, Abby? I know you're in the room. Abby, thank you for showing me your incredible lab. So Abby and Ian both have these amazing labs where they are introducing stresses on corals and monitoring their response, either hydrocarbons like Abby does, or in Ian's case, it's with acidification. And they're trying to really determine the nature of the response to the stresses. And then there's a whole genomics piece of that where we can identify healthy strains, and that's led by someone at our Hollings lab in North Carolina named Cheryl Woodley, and all really just fantastic advances that we'd never had a decade or two ago. So we're talking about genetics, genomics, we're talking about this lab that Ian's done, and I imagine you were the same. You're a biologist, aren't you, Abby? Like Ian, but here you've put together, you've used computer engineering and chemical engineering, and no small amount of mechanical engineering to create your tanks. And then, of course, you apply a little bit of biology to this problem, and here's what you've done. So people like you fascinate me, and this is why I think we are winning, is we have some of the best scientists in the world in ocean sciences because ocean sciences demand a multidisciplinary approach. And so the term being thrown around is polymath of the 21st century. In the past we used a term like gentleman scholar or Renaissance man. Now we have polymaths of the ocean, and it's fantastic. We also are doing great things with AI and unmanned systems. So these are images off of Hawaii to monitor the coral reefs in that area, and then use segmentation and artificial machine learning techniques to characterize and classify and then do long-term monitoring to assess health and impacts. And these are things that would have taken us hundreds of hours to do and study using prior techniques, and we can do them in minutes with these autonomous technologies and machine learning. And so those are great tools in the toolbox. And let's see here. This might take a while to load, I think, but there is another slide coming up. And it's working, I think. There we go. U.S. Coral Reef Task Force. This is another body that I think is doing great things to help us meet this challenge. This interagency group of very senior people representing all the agencies involved, like the USGS, like the Army Corps of Engineers, us, BOEM, the Department of Interior, including representation by the freely associated states of Micronesia, the Marshall Islands, and Palau, all working together to address coral reef challenges, not only here in Florida, but worldwide. And we had a big push to make sure we prevent anything that's happening here from reaching the Pacific. And that's going to be a big focus of effort. But also addressing the stony coral tissue loss disease here was a main area of discussion in our last meeting. And we're working to support some great science with this body, including EPA and the U.S. Coast Guard, to determine to what extent might ballast water be a cause. And so really, really fantastic work by this body. A major milestone was reached this year. We were able to get FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, to join the team. That organization has deep pockets and influence, and having them with us is going to really up our game, and we are very excited about that. Aren't we, Jen? Yes. She is smiling, and I am too. So now, an important area of our country that we're working to support and expand in NOAA is our sustainable fisheries. And they depend heavily on coral reefs, to the extent that coral reefs are fisheries nurseries. And so we have a major push to address a few things in terms of looking at the holistic marine environment. I mean, currently right now, we are the #1 sustainable fishery nation in the world. You look at other countries, they don't practice like we do. They have many more overfished stocks than we do. And so we're really the gold standard, and it's a great place to be. So we're trying to execute a program which is very important for the nation. You know, our world population is expanding. By the end of the decade, or probably by 2025, we're basically going to be near 9 billion people and have, it's like adding a whole nother China to the world population. Now, how are we going to feed that population? Well, the most sustainable type of protein is seafood. And right now, though, look at our statistics. We have a $16 billion trade deficit, seafood trade deficit, and 90% of the seafood we eat as a country is imported. And it's usually not really healthy because it's grown in a foreign fish farm that has very sketchy practices. And we are aiming to overturn that. We want to build domestic aquaculture in a safe and sustainable way in this country. We have the second largest EEZ in the world, and we have all the know-how. And currently that know-how gets exported to these other foreign fish farms, and we're going to turn that around. We have several policy actions in the works at NOAA to do this, and you're going to hear some announcements coming out very soon about that. So we're going to grow that program in a healthy and sustainable way to meet that need. It's important economically. It's also important from really a public health standpoint. And so that's our fisheries, and we're doing many other things to support and advance those. Again, very dependent on healthy coral reefs when you just look at the beginning of it all. Now, Professor Dodge talked about marine debris and marine pollution. And we've also, in our organization, done much to promote our marine debris program, which aims at reducing and responding to marine pollution. This is the only time I was able to get in the White House over the last 2 years. That's me, and you recognize most everybody else. And we were able to get the Save Our Seas Act signed last year. And this reauthorizes our program and looks at the really important parts of marine debris, which includes derelict or ghost fishing gear. And that's getting it at its source. And so some of the provisions in this act talk about going to Asia, where the primary source of marine pollution and the major rivers there, and building capacity in waste management. I mean, that's really the heart of the problem. Cleanup is good, and we do a ton of it, especially in the Pacific, with our ships and our partners. But it's really getting at the source, and this act does it. And there's a reauthorization being worked through the Congress right now on another version of this, version 2.0, which we'll fully support if enacted and signed. Now, our marine sanctuaries, I think many in the room are familiar with the Florida Keys and maybe the Flower Garden Bank sanctuaries, are really just they're just jewels in the crown of our public spaces. They're the national underwater parks of our country, and they do much of the foundational science that we need to better understand the challenges and just the nature of our coral reef systems. So, by the way, that is yours truly in our Great Lakes Sanctuary, which also do things like preserve shipwrecks and maritime heritage. And if you have not left this presentation knowing that I have the coolest job in all of government, then you've missed something. But our sanctuaries really do fantastic things. And I don't know, is Sarah Fangman in the audience today? She is the superintendent at Florida Keys, and she's on the front lines doing all we can with an amazing team down there. All right, well, we have a little video here, and thank you, Arnold, because I wouldn't be able to do this on my own. And as we tee it up, this is going to get at another program of NOAA's, which is doing incredibly good work, and you might not be able to, it might not be able to come up, but it's our Ocean Exploration Program. And this is a program where we go all around the world with our ship and our partners, and we have a deep diving ROV that's able to map or characterize, and the ship has multi-beam sonar to map. Brian Walker and I were talking a bit about this, and this program is going out and looking and assessing, mapping, and characterizing deep coral reef systems, some shallow, in some cases, and other areas of the ocean. This is a really important program that we're pushing because, think about this. I mean, corals are one small set of the larger ocean, which we have only explored 5% of. 5% of the world's oceans have been explored. Meanwhile, the surface of Mars and the Moon have been mapped to a higher resolution than we know our own seafloor. And we're changing that. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a second.
Oh, look at that. That is quite an impressive mound. I've never seen anything like this.
This is honestly one of the largest, like, aggregate of thickets of Lophilia that I've seen of this size. Because the colonies themselves are relatively dense, and then you have so many of them all next to each other.
Yeah.
And one thing I think we can talk about a little bit is how the live coral is actually white in this type of environment. So these are actually live and healthy. Yeah, this is, I mean, I'm not speechless, obviously, because I keep talking, but this is, for me, really, really exciting. Previously to the Okeanos coming out here and mapping more of this flat part of the Blake Plateau, this was all kind of originally just thought to be soft sediment, but these mound features that were just mapped last year really do shed light on how prolific these cold water coral communities are.
Yeah.
It's like the coral highway.
We're gonna follow it. That's where we're gonna go.
This is how I want to spend every Monday.
That's right.
And it's fantastic. In fact, I mean, you could probably do it right now. If you get on your phone and do NOAA Ocean Explorer, and I would not be offended if you did it, you'll see we are diving, our ROV is diving off of Key West right now. And so it's a great program, and now we're characterizing our amazing oceans in ways that will have great benefits to our country. There are, of course, things like, well, there's basic science, there's our fisheries, there's support for wind and energy development, and also there are other applications like pharmaceuticals. In fact, one program, one effort, a cruise off of Alaska found some marine sponges that are showing to have excellent properties in killing cancer cells. So this is what we're doing every day, and it's just terrific. You know, I have my friend, the NASA administrator, Jim Bridenstine, has a great program to go out to Mars and the Moon first again, but this knowing our own planet and ocean, I think, the payoffs are right there and then. Okay. Coming up, other things that are important is our data. Our data has many people that need it. And this is interesting. We've gotten support from the White House. They've released a national ocean policy that directs our data to be more available to users who need our data, like people involved with coral reefs. And so we've recently developed a neat application called, powerful and incredible really, is the Ocean Reports tool. And to go and do anything in the water and understand an area and minimize your impacts often takes a year or more of study. And this tool has every data set that about an area of ocean that anyone can fathom, and it's easy. The tool now makes it easy just to draw a square in an area of ocean and know everything about it. So these sighting problems for various activities that from the Army Corps, for example, now take not days, not months, not years, but seconds and even minutes in some cases. So this is, I think, another enabling capability that's going to allow us to get at the challenges. And then I mentioned White House support. In the middle here, you have Dr. Kelvin Drogemeyer, the science advisor at the White House. And by him, you see on the right, Dr. Margaret Leinen, a Scripps director, and on the left, Dr. France Cordova, the NSF director. If you look at the title of the slide there, it says the White House Summit on Partnerships to Advance Ocean Science and Technology. This was just last week, and we convened this summit. And that person in the middle, Kelvin Drogemeyer, is making a major push to grow our ocean exploration program for all the reasons we're here to talk about, to better understand what's happening, to characterize our planet for the beneficial uses, and to meet the challenges. This is very positive. This is going to translate into budget, and most likely, because we have great friends on the Hill, appropriations. And I've talked to some of the people in this room here, and we fund a lot of you. And this just means we're going to fund a lot more of you. And that's a very good thing. So a pleasing development there. Just happened last week. If you want to clap, you can, Brian. I mean, come on. Now, coming up on the end here, I'm kind of talking big picture here, but this is an amazingly exciting time to be ocean scientists. If you just step back and look what's going on in this environment, we have had a 400% increase in maritime activity over the last 25 years. I've talked a bit about the economic growth of our oceans. The demographics, the rise in U.S. population on the coast has also been explosive. You know, in fact, 40% of our country live by the coast. And then if you look at just the Gulf of Mexico, since 2010, that area has increased in population by 14%, double the rest of the country. So we're an ocean country, and our dependence on the ocean is getting greater and greater each year. And then look at something which I dealt with in the Navy, that we have returned to what they call great power competition, which means our major rivals, China and Russia, they are challenging us, and they're challenging us on the oceans. So this requires us, NOAA, to work with academia and the Navy to know our oceans better than the competition for all the important reasons, whether it be security, economy, or conservation of the environment. And NOAA is your lead federal agency to do this. I mean, doing this requires leadership, and NOAA is the lead agency to do this and show ocean leadership. Very proud that we're doing that there, and I'm grateful for the support by the Halmos College and Nova Southeastern. So, in the press from the White House event last week, I was quoted about, now the term moonshot is something we kind of use to describe any kind of big national action. And it was, my comment about an ocean or marine moonshot was welcomed by leadership in the White House. The Domestic Policy Council is something like the National Security Council, but it looks at internal U.S. affairs. And Joe Grogan, the head of the White House Domestic Policy Council, is supporting not only work on marine debris, he's supporting work on ocean exploration and mapping, as I mentioned, and very soon we're going to see an executive order on seafood, which is all being supported by this White House. So we are at a national level getting behind our marine and ocean challenges, and it is a great thing to see. Okay. That's all I have. Let me just conclude by saying, go Sharks. Thank you very much.
Dr. Gallaudet would take some comments.
Oh, yes. I'd be happy to take a few questions if there's time. If you don't have any, I might have some. Oh, come on, Laurel, you got to have a question. Go ahead. Oh, yes, ma'am.
What is NOAA doing to directly combat massive coral bleaching?
Massive coral bleaching. Well, I was hoping I'd answer that in the last 30 minutes, but I'm just kidding. But so that's exactly right. One of the most important things we do is research. What is called? We know warming is contributing that in a big way. You guys can come on up, no problem. So a lot of what we do is the science behind it. We don't regulate, except for fisheries, and even in that, we are ensuring our fisheries regulations are minimizing impact on habitat. I mean, overfishing, overfishing is and marine debris from ghost fishing gear are major threats to healthy reef systems. So that's like one. But really, it's our research program, and it's working with partners. I talked about Forest Blue, and so they're helping restore damaged reefs. But for the bleaching aspect, it's probably the scientific research is the biggest component. Knowing why. Thanks. Does that answer your question? Okay. Abby.
From your perspective, what do you feel is the biggest knowledge or data gap that NOAA has right now in regards to coral reefs?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. The biggest data gap. Well, there are many, and actually, and you know the answer better than me. But when I look at it holistically, it's our ability to predict. And so that is a large focus of our agency. We have two top priorities. One is we talk about the blue economy and all the data and services that we provide to help fuel that sustainably. The other is our weather and water priority. And that involves advancing our global weather model and our supporting ocean and regional models to predict. Really important for public safety, hurricane season, which damages corals, and but also in terms of long term. We have developed a unified modeling capability that is coupling, or really it's a framework that is our weather models and our climate models have basically a similar sort of approach. And heretofore, our modeling has just been this patchwork and very messy, where we had many redundant and ineffective processes and applications, and we're streamlining that. And this is going to improve our ability to predict. And I think that's the most important thing managers and natural resource conservationists need, is they need to understand what's happening and to what degree when. And that helps us manage and respond. And again, really not respond, but actually get ahead. So at a large scale, macro scale, it's improving our prediction capability, and we're making great strides to do that. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so you briefly mentioned NASA, and they're kind of, the media about them often suggests that every time there's an administration change, those priorities change. Does NOAA exhibit a similar change in priorities as time goes on, or are there more kind of long-term continuity in those goals?
What's your name?
Karen.
All right, Karen. Good question. Well, I'd say yes is the answer. Where NOAA has a mission, many actually, where and much of it is directed in law. So those things continue. Our coral reef conservation program, and in fact, we have climate research and we have drought prediction. We have all these missions that are required by law, fisheries management. And so we continue to do those, but as any administration will do, is the relative priority of those missions can often, kind of change a bit. And in fact, that's what we've done, is we prioritized weather and water prediction, and that was a really purposeful and deliberate act. We were getting beat or creamed by the Europeans in terms of our accuracy. And that was ridiculous, because our model, our weather enterprise, is the best in the world. Why was that so? Well, it was because we weren't organized efficiently. And so we're redoing this, and we have changed how we do modeling to make it more community-based. where now, rather than having 20 modelers in our modeling center, we are now opening the code up to 20,000 modelers across the country. And if you look at our results the last 2 hurricane seasons, we have done remarkably well in predicting hurricanes. And so that's kind of a way to answer. So we prioritize some things, but many things we keep doing because they're important for the public good, regardless of the administration. Thanks, Karen. Steve.
Yeah, I worked for the government for long enough to realize that funding and appropriations are more than just saying it. So when you talk, it takes a congressional appropriation or presidential money. When you're interacting with the people at the White House, to what extent, quantitatively, do you estimate they're distracted by the impeachment inquiry?
Well, that's a very good question, Steve. And I can only give you my example from last week. The folks I deal with, Domestic Policy Council, OSTP, Office of Science and Technology Policy, Council for Environmental Quality, they're all the ones that are giving us great support. I talked about exploration and mapping. I talked about the seafood support that we're getting. I haven't talked about our national marine, the fact that we have a new national marine sanctuary we just announced last week. So that was a huge environmental win, and the senior environmental officer in the White House spoke at the event. So fortunately for me and our agency and for the public good, we're not being affected. We're still getting good work done. Yes, ma'am. What's your name?
Sarah.
Sarah?
Yeah.
All right.
In the past couple of years, it's been cited that the U.S. is going to pull out of the Paris Climate Agreement. So how does that affect NOAA's research and funding and just the amount of work that you guys are able to take on?
And what's your question? I'm sorry.
So since the U.S. has pulled out of the Paris Climate Agreement as well as other similar agreements, how does that affect NOAA as a government agency and their ability to get work done?
Well, that's also a good question, Sarah. It's not affecting us in terms of the science mission we perform. In fact, there's a lot to say about that, but I can tell you that hasn't had any impact on the quality of our science and the ability to apply it to the public benefit and to the benefit of our natural resources. In fact, there's something that's not really talked about much in the fact that and this was actually addressed, I heard Terry talking about it, but Dr. Hughes, in that a lot of countries aren't following the Paris Accord. They're increasing emissions. Do you know one country that's not? Us. We have been decreasing emissions through clean energy technology. And so that's just an important consideration. Alex, yes.
There are some people promoting like climate engineering, stopping hurricanes. What do you think? Is it any viable approach, or it may just damage more?
Alex, that's a very good question. So this is a field called geoengineering, and that's interesting because there's some science and there's some policy there that you're asking me about. The science, I think, the jury's still out. There's more geoengineering research, every day being conducted, but they're so large scale, and I think it's a lot of uncertainty. I mean, there's already enough uncertainty in our climate models. Then to go predict how we could do something, man-made to influence climate the uncertainty is just compounded. So there's that. Then there's the policy aspect of do we want to do those things? Well, that's beyond my scope. I just provide the data and the science, and that will be something that other agencies have to handle. All right. Oh, thank you. This was a lot of fun. I'll stick around and enjoy the discussion.